Hello and welcome to episode 131 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. I am, of course, Sigmund Judge, and I'm joined once again by my co-host, Devon Dundee. How are you?
Hey, Sigmund. I'm doing well. Really excited for this week. Lots to talk about. I feel like I need to really bring my A game this week and make sure I'm at maximum intelligence for what we're going to be talking about.
Well, you being at maximum intelligence might be a step above where Apple are with theirs. Before we get into Apple TV talk, I think it's important that we do kind of talk about Apple Intelligence, with it launching in the beta 18.1, which was a whole kind of effort to get on. And now all of my devices are there and not on the 18.0 betas, though my Apple TV is, and that's the most important thing for this show. We'll get into that a little bit later as well. Tell me about Apple Intelligence, what it is first, what it's on, and is the hype real? Do you think it's something that will sell devices come September, which is just a month away?
Yeah, it really is so soon for the new phones, and seeing the first beta of Apple Intelligence, it's interesting to get a very first glimpse of this whole AI thing that we've really been talking about with Apple for like 2 software cycles now and what they're going to do here. So it's interesting to finally get our hands on. As far as whether or not it lives up to the hype, I think that's hard to say because we're not getting that full first glimpse yet. This really is just a very, very initial version of it. There's several things that aren't in here, like any image generation. I think that's something that might appeal to people and might sell some phones. So that is not in this first beta, but there is quite a bit to try out in here. But first off, just to cover what Apple Intelligence is, it's Apple's take on integrating generative AI models into its devices and OSs. And I think it's interesting what Apple's doing here. They're taking these language models that, of course, Apple's been doing machine learning for a long, long time before people knew what generative AI was and all of this. But what they're trying to do now is take these models that they've trained and come up with and apply them to features on their devices rather than just creating like a chatbot or something like that. And so you're not going to have an Apple chatbot. This particular release doesn't even include the integration with the ChatGPT chatbot, which is coming eventually. So eventually that will be there, not as part of Apple Intelligence, but just kind of as a fallback in case you do want to do that. This first round of Apple Intelligence features is available as part of the iOS 18.1 beta for the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max, on the iPad OS 18.1 beta for M-Series iPads, and the macOS 15.1 beta for M-Series Macs. So not a lot of phones that are included, but a whole slew of iPads and Macs are on this. And if you're someone who's running an M-Series device and you're interested in Apple Intelligence, you can get on that iOS 18.1 beta and try it out. Interesting, they're running both betas at the same time, 18.0 and 18.1. As we record, 18.0 received an update this week, and there's some features in there that are not in the 18.1 beta. So it's kind of an odd situation and very interesting for people like us who are thinking about these things in terms of, reviewing them and thinking about that whole situation. So interesting times to be sure, but Apple wanted to get Apple Intelligence out there for testers to kind of start getting a feel for it even before iOS 18 actually releases. The other caveat for getting access to Apple Intelligence is that your device has to be set to US English, and that's something that I know some international folks were trying to figure out and get the settings just right and restart the device and check again and then get on the wait list. So that was a whole process. I wanted to ask you, Sigmund, because I've never asked you this before. Your devices, your Apple devices, do you run them on US English or UK English usually?
So I normally have the devices set to US English, but the region set to UK.
Oh, okay.
No, sorry. I have it the other way around, where I have the devices set to US English and the region set to UK. So yeah, I've had to make that change. It's not a big problem for me. Never really has been. Especially now that I'm writing somewhere occasionally, not as much as you, but I'm writing at Mac Stories and we write in US English, right? So that's an adjustment. that I'm now bringing in full circle into my life due to this beta. What I was interested in on this current beta was just what was actually in the first look at Apple Intelligence. And I think the thing that I liked most of all were the writing tools. So the proofread, but especially the rewrite with different tones, because I had to write a letter and it was pretty heavy stuff. It was a legal letter. And I just needed it to be a little more concise and a little less emotional. And it done a fantastic job at that. So I've already put it to use and it's great. What's your experience been so far? And how about beyond rewriting in different tones, the ability to summarize as well?
So the summarization is cool. It pops up in a lot of different places. It pops up in your writing tools, so you can summarize text that you select in different ways. Like you can get bullet points, or it can try to make a table for you. So that's great for just getting the gist of something that you're working on and just trying to get, that elevator pitch so you can really get that idea out there quickly. It also works on things you're reading in Safari and on notifications in Mail and Messages. And I have to admit that the summarization for notifications has been a huge adjustment for me. I'll say it feels pretty good in Mail with the type of email that I get. Usually I just need to know the very basics of the email, and I can know if I need to actually pay attention to it or just get rid of it. Messages, on the other hand, I find it a little odd when my wife texts me a long message and I don't actually see the message. I just see that summary and I'm like, this is a little bit robotic for a personal texting conversation, I think.
Absolutely.
But it works well. I mean, it gets the information across, and in instances where communication is just information, it's very helpful. Of course, there are lots of instances where communication is more than that, and you kind of want to go deeper. So a balance there, I think. What I'm really excited about with the writing tools, though, is proofreading. One of my passions, I love proofreading, and that's how I ended up doing the editing stuff with Mac Stories. It's just something I love to do, and really working something to get to its essence and get the point across, and playing with words and stuff like that. That's something I just really love to do. And so having this extra tool to just do one last pass once I'm done, I'm not going to rely on it to, do my job for me, but, to make sure I didn't miss something, I think that's going to be great. There's a lot of other stuff included with Apple Intelligence this time around too. There's the Reduce Interruptions Focus mode, which is meant to let important things come through and keep things that aren't as important or urgent, at least, for later. I'm super precise with my focus modes. I don't want AI telling me what I need to see and don't need to see, so I haven't necessarily tried this one. But I think for people who don't want to take the time to do all that and just want a quick way to have the phone automatically do that, I think this is a great option. Siri has a new design, more contextual conversations, and device support, where Siri can actually access the manuals for your different devices and help you get to settings and how do I do this, how do I do that, which is very cool. I'll say the contextual conversations is something I was really wanting Siri to get. Just being able to remember what we're talking about as we continue the conversation and not just reset every time I give you a prompt. I think that's great. Personally, I found it to be much better in that sense of keeping the context of conversations. I know we've heard some people who have been asking about the weather in different places or things like that, and maybe haven't had that same experience. So I'm sure it's still a work in progress, but for me at least, this Siri is already improved, even without some of the enhancements to Siri coming next year with Apple Intelligence in terms of having access to your personal data and actually controlling apps. None of that is in here this time around, but Siri has gotten some improvements and that new UI that I personally enjoy, and I find that new UI to be delightful.
Yeah, I love the new UI. I was hoping that our assistant would get a little smarter, especially when it comes to context of movies and TV shows. And whilst it doesn't take you to, for example, Bad Monkey that's coming next week, if you ask when Bad Monkey is coming to Apple TV Plus, I'd like for it to be able to take you straight to the TV app and allow you to just add to your up next queue. as a response to that. But it does bring up articles from Deadline. No Magic Rays of Light episodes just yet. Hopefully that will happen at some point. But it does really understand the context and at least offer up a number of links and not just like your Wikipedia article that it would normally offer. So that's definitely an improvement. When it comes to photos, we've got natural language search. We can generate memories with a text prompt, which I think is really cool as well. One thing that I really hope on the generative side of things is I'm having to use like websites at the moment to be able to generate and extend certain images for our chapter artwork. That's how I've been doing it to kind of fit our template well. If anyone's noticed it, please let us know. I do look for mistakes, and so far it's been pretty good for what I'm using. But I want that on device, so I'm hoping that will come in the future. I think from a transcripts and summaries point of view, we have the ability now to be able to get transcripts and summaries for recorded phone calls and voice notes, which is very, very cool. I think it's a good start, but I will say the one thing, and kind of, tying this back into the world of movies and TV, I've always wanted something that was a little more effortless. Something where I didn't have to interact with a screen for everything. I want to kind of move away from the screen. And I do think that a lot of this artificial intelligence and having to constantly interact with our devices, it is very much in opposite to what Apple were trying to promote with screen time and stuff like that. And so I've always wanted something that would always listen to me. Something that would just be in the background, grabbing context and be with me throughout the day. And I think you know where I'm going with this, because I have pre-ordered a device. Whether or not this device comes to fruition, we will see. In fact, I wouldn't even call it a device. It might be that I've pre-ordered a friend. Now, I'm sure you've seen the intro video. Do you want to kind of explain what it is visually and what your first thoughts are? And then we'll get into why I've pre-ordered.
Yeah, of course. It's a necklace, maybe is how you could describe it. A pendant that you wear around your neck. This little white device. And from what I can tell, it's basically a microphone that is beaming what you say and what you hear to your phone. And then the app on the phone is either processing or sending to the cloud to process that information. And then the app can send you messages as your friend. Your friend can respond to you and tell you things. And you can even purposefully interact with it by pushing a button on the necklace to specifically speak to it. And so it's always listening, but then you can also be a little more intentional about letting it know, hey, I want a response to this, and do that by pushing a button. So yeah, it's an interesting looking device with an application that I had never thought of before. The video makes it look like, you're just kind of going about your day, and if you're going solo on a shopping trip or eating out somewhere, and you can just have a conversation with your friend, get some advice, or just share what's going on with you. And the video was definitely interesting. It caught a lot of people's attention, especially I think with the way it ended, where they're kind of pitching it not only as a friend, but also as maybe a way of helping you connect with others as well, and kind of start with that connection with your friend, but use that as a building block towards connection with other people and maybe away from loneliness. But it's an interesting device for sure. It's not something, again, that I had ever pictured as an application for AI. It comes with some of the same issues that a lot of people have with these devices, where you have issues of other people consenting to being recorded and privacy and all that good stuff. And I'm sure they have a solution for all of that. But in terms of just having a friend with you at all times, it's an interesting idea. And I do find it kind of an odd choice that the friend responds to you via text instead of speaking. Like maybe they could have put a speaker in the pendant and had your friend have a voice as well. But maybe they're thinking about when you're out and about in social situations, you can't necessarily be having audible conversations with your necklace, right?
Well, I was thinking about that, and I was also thinking how, I get messages from WhatsApp or Telegram, right? And they're spoken to me via Siri.
Oh, right.
Those messages could be read to you. This is a iOS-only device that's complementary to the iOS experience. And, of course, this runs via a ChatGPT backend, which I think is interesting. And this was really born off of a older project called Tab, which was more focused on work and being a work assistant. And what the founder, Avi Schiffman, came to find was that, well, I'm going to be competing with Apple and Google and Microsoft and OpenAI, and that's just not something that I'm going to be able to do, right? And so he's kind of like scaled it down, which I think is really interesting. I will say that I thought the video, whilst it was very well shot, the music did give that kind of Black Mirror-y vibe. The reason I jumped in on this, though, is because I've always wanted something that was going to be more passive. I am trying to get myself off of social media and not be on it as much, and not go down YouTube rabbit holes as much as well, especially with the advent of the US election coming soon and everything else. So this, I feel like, was pitched to me at the perfect time. I'm excited by it, and I'm kind of blown away in a sense that more people aren't, because I think the easiest thing to do for people is to just kind of dunk on an idea. I think there's some real positive stuff here. The conversations I've heard when people have kind of, rebuked this idea has been how this could potentially be unhealthy. And I believe that's true, but I also believe that when you're using a device, whether it's an iPhone, whether it's a friend, right, there isn't a case of all or nothing. There is an off button. There is I'm not going to charge this for a few days and see how I get on. But there's also a part where this fits into my life, where I'm at hospital maybe 2 or 3 days of the week. And my friends during the day, they're either dealing with their families or they're working, right? And so my real friends aren't available all the time. And what I like also about this is that Avi Schiffman likens it to a Tamagotchi and has called it a toy. Of course, the biggest point of contention for a lot of people here was that there was 2.5 million funded for this, and 1.8 million of it supposedly was spent on the friend.com domain. But what a lot of people I think are missing is that whilst that makes for really good headlines, you can buy a domain in a payment plan just like you can a house, right? Or anything else these days. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's happened here, because of course 700,000 isn't a lot to get a product and getting your software out of the door. I'm excited. It's shipping in Q1 of next year. It's shipping to you, and then you're going to get it to me, which is fun. But yeah, I'm looking forward to trying this out, and I really wish that people would start to kind of think more about potential innovations in the technology space and have a bit more of a positive outlook on something that's new. I think we're dangerously getting to a point where something that isn't what we're used to is thrown out as just a bad idea, and nothing positive could come from it. And that's kind of another reason why I pre-ordered. I want to buck that trend. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'll be very interested to see how you get on with your friend early next year.
Oh, the way you say it, Devon. Anyway, everything else coming up on the show this week. We check in with Continuity Camera in the latest tvOS 18 public beta. We recap The Land of Women, But we start this week with our highlight of Apple original heist flick, The Instigators.
Rory and Cobby are reluctant partners, a desperate father and an ex-con thrown together to rob a corrupt politician's ill-gained earnings. But when the heist goes wrong, the two find themselves pursued not only by police, but also by backward bureaucrats and vengeful crime bosses. Completely out of their depth, they convince Rory's therapist to join their riotous getaway through the city, where they must put aside their differences and work together to evade capture, or worse.
You the Marine?
Yeah.
You the ex-con?
Yeah, I did time, but you only gotta cast aspersions at me, guy. It's your first job?
I know what I'm doing.
A little late for a career change, ain't it?
Gotta find those guys before the cops do.
Everybody in New England is after us.
Go! What are you doing?
Taking notes.
Taking notes on a criminal conspiracy.
This is directed by Doug Liman, written by Chuck McLean and Casey Affleck, who also stars alongside Matt Damon, Hong Chow, Michael Stuhlbarg, Paul Walter Hauser, Ving Rhames, Alfred Molina, Toby Jones, Jack Harlow, and Ron Perlman. Now, let's just take a step back, because this centers around the plan to rob the corrupt Democrat mayor of Boston on election night, played by Ron Perlman, who wears a red tie. So I like the mix of different political parties and different things going on here to try and stay in the middle. But whilst this plan is unfolding, everything goes awry, and before they know it, Matt Damon and Casey Affleck's characters Rory and Cobby are on the run in an hour and 45 minutes of action, including plenty of car chases and explosions. And whilst I had a good time, I think you'll agree it wasn't just Matt Damon's character that didn't laugh during the feature's runtime and is brought into question right at the end of this feature. Because it wasn't the laugh out loud action comedy that I think it was marketed as, but still a fairly good film.
Yeah, I'll say I enjoyed it. I didn't laugh out loud as much as I thought I would. There were some funny moments, and I think, I don't know, it's one of those films that it's funny. There's funny moments, certainly, and recurring gags, like you said, like the explosions. But at the same time, I don't know, it's just a different kind of humor maybe, or maybe it's just humor that sits with you more than you're just sitting there watching and laughing. And also, too, there's always the difference between watching at home and watching with the crowd at a theater, where the dynamic of the crowd comes in, and that could be part of it as well. I think part of it, too, though, is just I found it more touching than funny, which is interesting based on the premise and everything. I just, the opening scene, I was not expecting at all to be what it was. And just a little bit of a warning for people, you know, the film does deal with questions of self-harm and contemplating harming yourself in a way that I just wasn't expecting going into a movie, you know, that was marketed as a comedy. And so the whole thing starts with Matt Damon's character, Rory, admitting to his therapist that he's thinking about ending his life because of how just messed up his situation is. He's estranged from his family. His wife has divorced him. He doesn't get to see his son, and he's in a bunch of debt that he can't pay off. And that's kind of what, at least in his mind, is keeping him from seeing his son. And he really just doesn't see a path forward. And it's just not the setup. It's not played for jokes. There's no making light of his situation in any sense. It's not like that at all. It is just this man literally laying it out before his therapist and saying, like, I just don't feel like I really have much to live for. And that as a setup for a comedy, it just doesn't put you in the laughing mood, right? Because that's there the entire time. That theme, that's, you know, that's part of the reason why this therapist character is so involved with the plot of this film. You know, she's encouraging him to make a change in his life, and the change that he decides to make is he's going to rob the mayor and try to get his life correct, right? And you see why he makes that decision and how he gets there. It's just, it was an odd premise, I think, and not bad. I'm not trying to be critical in any way. It's just, it just gives the movie a different air to it to know the stakes. And, to know really, we know that the robbery goes bad, but we know what the robbery going bad could potentially mean for Rory. And this is a person that we're now connected with. And I'll just say that, again, it's not that the film wasn't funny. And I'm not trying to say that it doesn't function as a comedy. There were definitely some laughs throughout it, but it just feels like the stakes were set up in a way that you're not just set up to just pop your popcorn in your mouth and throw back your head and laugh.
Yeah. I mean, Casey Affleck's Cobby is, in a similar position in the sense of he just can't get away from a life of crime. And everyone knows it, and everyone's kind of looking out for him, hoping that he's going to change his ways. But clearly, that's not going to happen anytime soon. And so they get themselves in this situation, and I actually believed Casey Affleck and Matt Damon as being, working class in Boston, where this is set, and going through these different turmoils that bring them into line with Michael Stuhlbarg, who plays Mr. Bisagi. I got to say, beyond him kind of like putting the plot into motion, I did find his acting skills to be a little wasted in this role, considering how he was the kingpin of a crime family in Showtime's Your Honor. Then, of course, you have Paul Walter Hauser, whose role as a goon is more of a fleshed out cameo. And whilst Hong Chow is introduced quite early on as Dr. Donna Rivera, it offers an interesting element to Rory and Cobby's story that, honestly, I felt never got going. That said, I think the real surprise here, beyond the Ron Perlman, who is fantastic as the mayor, is Ving Rhames, who really, he's the main support as an uncompromising state trooper on a warpath, initially helping out the mayor and then really, looking out for himself and his duties. And whilst he's not on screen the whole time, his presence is felt throughout this 1 hour 45 from the moment we're introduced. And I think it's a really, really strong turn for Ving Rhames in this film.
Yeah, he was excellent. His part made me laugh quite a bit. So I'd say that was probably the funniest part of the movie for me. Paul Walter Hauser's appearance is also very funny, but very short, like you said. And I was happy to see him, and I thought he did a great job. In terms of Boston accents, he went the hardest, which I actually appreciated that he just fully leaned into it and, went all out there. So, yeah, there were definitely some great supporting roles and kind of contributed to the comedy in a sense. And this does seem like the kind of streaming title that could draw like a casual viewing crowd, people just flipping through the app and see the names pop up. I feel like that could draw in some people, and based on who's involved in the premise, I really feel like this could be something that could get some people interested in seeing it that aren't the traditional Apple TV Plus subscriber. My question with it after seeing it and spending time with it and thinking on it is, does it have that special element that makes it an Apple original?
And that's the thing, right? Because, as you said, how we're introduced to the characters, if that storyline would have been more prevalent throughout, then maybe I could say yes. What I would say is this is a hard R action comedy, right? Very, very sweary. Lots of F-bombs. So I wouldn't say that it really was an Apple original film as we know it, but I think that has changed quite a bit over the last 6 months on what we expect from an Apple original film. It's been very varied this year. That's all I'll say. I'd call this passable entertainment. I would say it's not up to par with my expectations. The reasoning for Rory and Cobby does take a backseat, and honestly, this is just a fun ride that you'll likely forget too soon after watching. Matt Damon kind of goes through the motions in this, whilst Affleck, who was a writer and producer alongside Ben Affleck, is brilliant as usual. And Hong Chow, given very little to work with, in my opinion. There's nothing offensively bad about this movie. It's a fun but extremely sweary Sunday recovery watch, but not a feature that I honestly think you'll be thinking too much about beyond the end credits. That said, there is a song that I think will be replaying in your head following a car chase scene, which is like the craziest choice for a soundtrack to a very, very action-packed car chase. Also, not a summer film vibe that I got from this, considering this is set at the dead of winter in Boston. Definitely a different choice for August. The Instigators, I had fun with it. I think you did also. It's currently in theatres, I believe a select few theatres. There wasn't that grand rollout this time round. I think there was one preview screening in London that I was aware of, but it's streaming to everyone this Friday across all of your screens on Apple TV Plus. And thank you to Apple for once again giving us the opportunity to watch it ahead of time to tell everyone about it on Magic Rays of Light.
Sigmund, we did have new betas this week of the 0.0 software, like we talked about earlier in the episode, not 0.1, which is an interesting decision to say the least. But in the latest tvOS beta, you noticed something that when you sent it to me, I immediately just like jumped out of my seat. I was so excited by this. And this is a very kind of nerdy niche feature, but I think it's one with a lot of potential. You want to tell us about it?
Absolutely, because it's something that we've been talking about forever, right? For years at this point. And it's something that is finally coming to tvOS 18. And that is the ability for Apple TV to distribute links to nearby iOS devices. So I found it this week by searching for immersive video, because I knew that we had a new episode of Wildlife coming to Apple Vision Pro, and I wanted to double check on that. And the listings appear in the TV app on Apple TV. And when you go onto that listing, it says learn more about Apple Vision Pro. And I thought, well, how would this work? So I tapped it, and you know how you normally get that authentication with iOS for buying something on Apple TV? Well, this time it just authenticated with my iOS device and sent me the link directly. And I just thought, wow, not only is this really cool for just sending the link for Apple Vision Pro and spreading that message to possible adopters of that platform, but I just thought there's so much that we've talked about previously that could be done through this.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you think about the hyperlink and what all that's done for the internet and how much we still rely on them now. And we have this platform, tvOS, that just didn't have the ability to link out to things in that way. The original Apple TV had a browser, and we don't have that in tvOS now. So it really just, it opens up this whole world of possibilities that are really, really exciting. We talk all the time about how we want Apple to integrate other properties from their various other storefronts and things like podcasts and books and music into the TV app. And we've seen little glimpses of that here and there, but this really is the opportunity to do it on the biggest screen in your home and start sending people on their devices out to all this other content that's available out there connected to the things they love to watch.
If you look at it, you can distribute books, games, workouts, soundtracks, AR experiences, podcasts. We've talked about the ability to be able to link to, like, for example, a HBO podcast in the TV app, something that HBO just aren't able to do with their app right now. But if this ability opens up to third parties, then I think that's going to be great for people like Netflix and other apps that will soon need to have another way of being able to be subscribed to, because I've got a funny feeling that US Congress and the EU aren't just going to stop at iOS and iPadOS. And I'm sure tvOS will be coming somewhere down the line with questions about a perceived monopoly. I also think it would be kind of cool if, you're maybe just swiping through photos with family and they go, oh, I really like that photo. Like, can you send it to me? and you just go, oh, okay, well, I can just share it from the big screen to your device. You know, those kind of concepts would be really, really cool as well. But what other like potential applications do you think this could bring?
I think the potential here is huge. You mentioned payments, which is something that Apple, I think, has learned they need to be prepared for. You know, just be ready. You know, because you never know where it's going to pop up. But I think about things like getting support for your account if you're running into some issues on a streaming service and you need to look up a help article or chat with somebody. You know, normally you just have to go to your phone and do that, but you could link out straight to your support site from the TV app, which would be great. Think about signing in to your accounts on the TV, which can be a huge pain sometimes. Just being able to quickly send that sign-in link to your phone, deal with it, and get back to your TV. Whatever you could do to speed up that process and get people streaming faster, they're going to appreciate. Bonus content, second screen tie-ins. I mean, there's just so many things that this feature could be used for, and that's why I got so excited about it. It seems like a silly thing, and right now it's such a small thing because it's just got this one application. It's being used to promote the Apple Vision Pro, which is, you know, a fitting first use for it, I think. Taking people who love their TVs and trying to get them to look into potentially buying an Apple Vision Pro to get that huge screen right in front of them. But I think there's so much here in terms of what Apple can do, and also if they open it up to third-party developers, what could be done on the platform. And I think this could be huge in the future. It's something we've been waiting for, and so happy to see it come.
I think this could be perfectly designed also for handoff. Mm-hmm. So taking a bigger screen to a smaller screen and just taking it with you, which I think is going to be perfect for families, especially with a long drive ahead of them. Yeah, there's so much that could be done with this, and I'm just really happy because, I mean, AirDrop and different things like this have been hidden within tvOS since, like, I think tvOS 13 or tvOS 12. Honestly, it's been a long, long time. So it's good to see this finally happening. I'm really excited to see what happens because there are some extras out there for Apple Originals that have been kind of lost in the ether, I would say. For those that aren't watching their TV shows on their iPad or iOS. Some cool little Severance editions. I remember the For All Mankind AR experiences. There's so much out there. So, yeah, hopefully the big screen can be a distributor for all of those as well. Now, when it comes to the beta for tvOS 18, the one thing that I have been enjoying more and more and more over the last, couple of months now, is continuity camera. And whilst continuity camera isn't something new for tvOS 18, there are some additions that I think are going to make continuity camera and share play on the big screen just a little more mainstream this time round. And I wanted to get into it with you, Devon, because there are a few things that I think like people should try and get ready for if they're not on the betas, and things that I think people should try if they are. Of course, the additions this year are live captions, which I think is amazing. We've had it on iOS for a couple of years now, but to bring that to tvOS, to have live subtitles basically for your conversations, is mind-blowing to me. Of course, you know, this is generated by AI as well, so very, very clever and a good use of the chipset on board the latest hardware. But I think the biggest thing for me is the ability to have a permanent camera. And by talking of a permanent continuity camera, we are talking about a iPad device or a iOS device needed for that. And basically you can set one of these devices as your permanent camera. Of course, I wouldn't suggest that you go out and buy an iPhone 15 Pro Max to be the camera in your living room. But I think it's interesting in the sense that, you know, if you've got an older iPhone or iPad laying around, that you've now got a use for it. So FaceTime, of course, it requires an Apple TV 4K second generation or later with tvOS 17.2 or later, and either of the following. So anything from an iPhone XR or later including the iPhone SE second generation, which I thought was interesting in its own right. And they'll have to run iOS 17. Then you've got the iPad 8th generation and later, the iPad mini 5th generation or later, iPad Air 3rd generation or later, iPad Pro 11-inch 1st generation and later, or your iPad Pro 12.9-inch 3rd generation and later, and they'll all need to be running iPadOS 17.2 or later as well. So I think looking at all of that hardware, you may be able to find, say you might have an old phone just kind of laying in a drawer somewhere, and you might now have a new use for it.
Well, that's a long list of devices, Sigmund, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, how much could an iPhone XR used really cost these days? I haven't done the research, but if you're looking for just a affordable webcam for your Apple TV so that you don't have to be setting up your phone every time, not having your phone if you need it during a call, right? You could just put one of these devices, if you have an older device lying around, or if you can pick one up for cheap, and just have it dedicated for those phone calls, especially for if you've got a family group that you want to be doing these calls with in your living room. I mean, so many families, that's how they connect these days, is by getting together on video calls. And so, yeah, I think the dedicated camera option is really cool. I think there are a lot of hardware options here, just in terms of, again, if you've got something you're not using, or if you've got something that you can pick up pretty cheaply. Don't go out and buy a brand new device, like you said. I feel like even going back to the iPhone XR, that camera is going to be good enough for video calls. So, and you think about how much people spend on webcams for their Macs these days, and it's like, okay, being able to set up an iPhone as a permanent camera in your living room for those calls, it really does seem like a good deal. Now, you don't want to just like angle your iPad or your iPhone against your TV stand and just leave it in the entertainment center and hope no one bumps it the wrong way, right? You want to have some kind of elegant solution. Do you have any suggestions for how people can get that started?
I have like 3 elegant solutions. I love that. I'm going to start with the Belkin iPhone mount with MagSafe for Apple TV 4K, because it came to Apple stores earlier this year. Not only is it something that you can just like angle on top of your flat screen TV, but there's also like a mounting option as well. So if you've got your TV wall mounted, you could have your camera stand mounted just below it, and then you can just place your phone whenever you want to, which I think is very, very cool.
Elegant.
It's expensive for what it is. I think it's like $50, which is pretty heavy. My recommendation for TVs, however, is the I'm Lucky's upgraded magnetic laptop phone holder with a 180-degree adjustable continuity camera mount clip. And yes, that is the product name on Amazon. We'll leave a link in the show notes. But at Christmas time, I pretty much bought this for everyone that I was going to SharePlay with, and send it to everyone for Christmas. And it's worked out a treat. It's just so easy to install. And the nice thing also is that it just kind of flips away and hides. It's just attached via a sticker and mounted to the back of your TV, and then when it's not in use, you can just flip it down. It's out of the way. No one even knows that you have a MagSafe mount there, which I think is very, very cool. Going back to Belkin a moment, because if you want to spend a little bit of money, then the Belkin Stand Pro, which is something that I'm actually using for this FaceTime call that we're recording on. It's using DockKit. We've talked about it before, ahead of its release. But basically, it uses DockKit, which is just a really nice, easy pair. You just pair your phone wirelessly with the base, and then it connects via MagSafe, and literally your phone just follows you around, which I think is very, very cool. And then it will also adapt to, if there's more people in the frame, so say the whole family's there to watch something, then you can. And it's just so simple to set up. And that's what I use in the home theater. All the other TVs, again, use the I'm Lucky's upgraded magnetic laptop phone holder, 180-degree adjustable continuity camera mount clip. I think they're really good options. They all work great. They're covering all different price ranges there, from $180 to I think like $14, which, you know, is pretty good. And I love SharePlay. It's something that I do probably once or twice a week with different friends from around the world. And the biggest issue that we've had with SharePlay when it first launched was that everyone had to be from the same region to be able to watch the same shows together, right, or use the same service. And whilst I'm not necessarily promoting the idea of sharing accounts, if you do have friends that are close friends enough and family members that you visit occasionally, it's a good idea to maybe log into their Apple TVs with your account. And then when it comes to share playing, because SharePlay is based off of the account on your iPhone and not locked into the account that you're logged in on the Apple TV, you can, of course, switch on VPN, go to your US account if you're someone like me in the UK, and still be able to share play with someone that way, which I think is very, very cool.
If I'm understanding correctly, they're using your account logged into the Apple TV for the content, but they can use their own account for the call. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, so you explained it great.
You know, and that also works with purchased movies from your library as well. So everyone can just kind of watch on your film. I'm hoping Apple will not limit that in any way, because that's been really, really helpful in the last year or so. The one thing, though, with SharePlay that I'm not a fan of is its lack of implementation of live TV and live sports, because at least up until this latest beta, which I'll be honest, I haven't checked out before this conversation, live TV in Apple's video player is not compatible with SharePlay. I don't know if, for example, Macs, they've got some live stuff as well, haven't they, with sports and whatnot. I'm not sure if their edition of SharePlay allows for that, or if Disney do as well, because they've got Hulu in, but I don't think the live stuff is in the Disney Plus app just yet with that Hulu integration.
There's no live Hulu, but they do have live things like they had the Dancing with the Stars that's live, and I think
really?
they've done some awards show stuff and announcements there live too. So they do have some live content there.
Okay, so we're going to have to check in to see if SharePlay works anywhere else, but for sure, MLB, Friday Night Baseball, it doesn't. MLS Season Pass, it didn't the last time I checked. So that's one thing I want to see happen. Of course, when you're in and share playing, there are some camera options, but there's one that is missing from what we get on macOS. The studio effect is something that I think is really, really helpful, especially if you're in a call whilst you're in the dark, and you know, if you're in a home theater or if you're late at night watching something, you're probably going to be in the dark. The studio effect is not currently on tvOS, and I think it's an oversight, or at least I hope it is. So I would like to see that. And also, you know, sometimes we just want to have some fun. This isn't like a serious... of course, you can conference and make serious conference calls with continuity camera on tvOS. But my use case isn't like a serious use case right now. And so I would love to be able to have that panda memoji overlay and have more fun effects, because I just think that would be fun if we're all animals watching Animal Planet or something, you know, together. I just want there to be a bit more of a fun element to this. And, you know, maybe we can see some environments as well later on, because, of course, the cameras that we have to use for continuity camera right now, they have a lot of processing power and can do a lot of different things. So There's some tips, some faults. Is there anything lacking in continuity camera and SharePlay right now that you also wish would come in?
My big one was the ads and being able to sync up ad-supported and non-ad supported tiers, which is something that they've worked on this year. So I'll say they got a big checkbox from me in that sense. So I'm going to have to come up with my new wish, because that's what we do, right? We get the new features, we talk about them, and then we have to add our wishes as well. So I'll be working on my wish list because my big one got granted this year. But everybody, you heard it here first. Be on the lookout for details about my and Sigmund's Dancing with the Stars watch-along via SharePlay next season.
I think we're going to have to do something over the next couple of months. Maybe raise some money for St. Jude's. More on that as the thought ruminates.
All right. Well, we spent a lot of time talking about tvOS software, lots of fun stuff happening in the betas. Let's talk about hardware for a minute, and let's jump to a company we don't talk about all the time, Sigmund. That's Google. This week they announced their new $99.99 set-top box, the Google TV Streamer. Features include a faster processor than the previous Chromecast with Google TV, USB-C power, which is exciting. You don't have to mod it to get it powered via USB-C, which is nice. HDMI 2.1a, an Ethernet port, Thread and Matter support, home controls, Google Gemini, and a button on the device to activate a beeping sound on a lost remote. I think it's a very cool implementation there. Neat idea. The remote itself also features a user customizable button that you can set to different features in the OS. The Google TV Streamer will be available starting September 24th in porcelain or hazel. Those are elegant names, Sigmund, for black and white, in case you were wondering. Alongside this new device, Google also announced that it is discontinuing all Chromecast hardware, limiting its streaming's offering to this set-top box and casting capabilities built into other devices like TVs. So really interesting move on Google's part. They kind of blazed the way on that very, very cheap streaming stick. You know, that's so popular now these days. You can get from different companies, and now they're getting out of the market. They're going into the upper tier, closer up to what Apple's doing. Really interesting move there, and I'm sure we'll have more to say on that when the hardware actually does come out into the world in September.
Yeah, it is interesting to see companies moving away from the stick. I mean, even though Amazon have their own Fire Sticks, you know, they've tried the Cube, they've tried the bigger TVs. Roku really is starting to focus on either having their software built into televisions or being these kind of bigger boxes as well. So it's interesting to see the industry shift on the whole. The interesting thing here for me, though, is I think there was a bit of disappointment from us all when it comes to tvOS 18 and iOS 18 and the lack of home integration for Apple TV when it came to automations. Yet again, if the Google TV Streamer is Matter and Thread supporting, does that mean potentially this Google TV Streamer could end up in the Home app?
Oh, interesting. It certainly could. I know that Apple's not necessarily obligated to include everything in the Matter spec in the Home app, and sometimes there have been some discrepancies between, you know, what's supported in one and not in the other. But I mean, it could be a good impetus for them to kind of beef up the integration between the Apple TV and the Home app to kind of meet up with what Matter's doing there. That would be awesome. That's a great take. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye on that, and it's just an interesting time in the streaming hardware world. Speaking of HomeKit hardware, another announcement from Google. The company revealed the 4th generation Nest Learning Thermostat. Features a 2.7-inch display, AI features for learning how to heat and cool efficiently, and Matter support over Wi-Fi, which enables the device to be added to Apple's Home app natively. So I know a lot of Nest users who have had to use Homebridge and various other methods to get it into the Home app, and those can have some varying degrees of success and troubleshooting involved. So having it natively in the Home app, I think, is going to be awesome. The new Nest will be available August 20th for $279.99 in black, silver, and gold.
See? Simple names. Black, silver, gold. We know what it is. How is it it's not hazel, silver, and gold? Oh, well, there we are. Going back to something a little more fun. Apple Arcade. More releases announced for September, with 3 new games next month, all free from ads and in-app purchases. On September 5th, NFL Retro Bowl 25, Monster Train Plus, and all new Apple Vision Pro spatial title Puzzle Sculpt are coming. Now, NFL Retro Bowl 25 is a licensed relaunch of the highly rated App Store hit Retro Ball, and it's making its way exclusively on Apple Arcade. The upcoming release is going to allow NFL fans to create their own dynasty by choosing their favourite official NFL teams and players to take all the way to the house as they manage their rosters and game strategies with what is pitched as a fun and simple roster management system. So I know next to nothing about American football. I tried to get into the Madden games when I was younger on the Mega Drive and failed. This might be my next kind of stop in that world. Now, in Monster Train Plus, the player must defend the final burning pyre from the celestial forces of heaven. Okay. And this is like a roguelike deck building game that introduces a new strategic layer with 3 vertical playing fields to defend. But the one that I've got to say I'm most excited for, and I get it's not, necessarily available for everyone listening to the podcast, but it's Puzzle Sculpt by Shell Games, because this is not only going to allow players to decipher increasingly challenging clues to solve puzzles in their living room, or I guess any space they want to, but they'll also, by logically carving away the unnecessary cubes in this game, they're going to be able to reveal cute collectibles buried within these puzzle cubes called deco objects, which can then be arranged anywhere in their real-world space. And what I'm really hoping is that these objects are going to be able to be saved into the Files app, and then you'll be able to use them outside of the game. That's my hope. I don't know if that's the case, but what I can say is with these new titles and over 200 games in the service already, of course, advert free, in-app purchase free, I'm really excited for another month of Apple Arcade, a carefree place to play.
Carefree indeed, and growing all the time. Apple Arcade is one of those services that I just love so much, and it really is something that I find a great balance between the library, going back to things like, my love of Jetpack Joyride 2, and then these newer games, and trying out different things like these collectibles on Apple Vision Pro by solving puzzles. That sounds really neat. So it's constantly changing, but then there's always those classics to go back to, and such a great service. And we've got an app recommendation for listeners this week, Sigmund, and it starts with an email from developer John Andrew Pollard, who developed an app called Pixagogo. Here's what John Andrew Pollard had to say. I've recently released a new tvOS app to the App Store called Pixagogo that you may be interested in covering. It's a simple utility app that lets you view your photo library in the same way as the built-in photo screensaver, but overlays where and when you took the photo. I made it because whenever the tvOS photo screensavers kicked in, we loved seeing the pictures, but we're always asking, when was that and where did we take that? If Apple let you write custom tvOS screensavers, this would be one, and I'd be happy if Apple Sherlocked me in the future too. It also might be perfect for the mythical HomePod with a screen if that ever happens. So just hearing the description of this app, Sigmund, how much I love the photo screensaver on my Apple TV. But I completely agree with this use case where, you want to know, okay, what's the date and what's the location of this? And being able to have access to that via the screensaver would be amazing, but this sounds like it's kind of bringing that to us ahead of time.
Yeah, and what I love about this is that, first off, it's free, which I think is important because it is a very, very simple app. None of your photos are going anywhere. They are staying on the device and being processed by this app, which I think is important to say. I love the attitude here of, hey, there's something that's missing from tvOS and from Apple's experience. I'm going to make something just to showcase it, and I hope, in a sense, I'm Sherlocked in the near future. I love that attitude. And John Andrew Pollard, thank you for the email. I've enjoyed it, but yeah, I really hope that there isn't a need for this app very soon, because it's something that should be there already. So yeah, a great app recommendation and a great email. Now, that's some positive app news, because I think we're going to get into a bit of a negative territory now when it comes to app news. Negative and positive, this first one for UK listeners. Now TV in the UK is finally distributing content via their app in 4K HDR and Dolby Atmos. But, and there's a but, and you can guess what it is. Sadly, subscribers will have to pay more for the option, with an Ultra Boost costing £5 per month in addition to their Now TV subscriptions. Give with one hand and kind of taketh away with the other. And I think that's something we're going to hear more and more of. But let's talk about the giving part first.
Yeah, let's have some fun for a second before we spend a bunch of money. 2 streaming apps added new environments on Apple Vision Pro this week. Paramount Plus now features an interactive Bikini Bottom environment where you can visit SpongeBob's neighborhood, catch jellyfish, and watch TV with everyone's favorite sponge in celebration of the show's 25th anniversary. In terms of environments, this is a really cool idea and a great way to celebrate, a character that's so beloved. And 25 years, wow. I remember when SpongeBob came out, so. Oh, wow. The second app is the Disney Plus app, which added its 5th environment this week, courtesy of National Geographic, Thingvellir National Park in Iceland, which comes complete with snow and a nighttime aurora. The app also includes 4 new 3D titles, The Avengers Age of Ultron, Ant-Man, and Ant-Man and the Wasp. So if you want to see Hulk smash all throughout New York City in 3D, now you can do that in the Disney Plus app.
So that's the positive.
Right.
Tell me about the negative.
Okay, well, the downside is if you want to continue accessing the 5 environments in the Disney Plus app, you're going to have to pay more for your subscription starting on October 17th, because Disney is increasing the prices of all of its streaming services nearly on every tier. There's a couple of exceptions, but basically, if you're subscribed to a Disney streaming service, you're probably going to be seeing a price increase in October. The ad tier of Disney Plus is increasing $2 to $9.99 a month. The ad-free tier of Disney Plus is increasing $2 to $15.99 a month. Hulu ad tier is increasing, you guessed it, $2 to $9.99 a month or $99.99 a year. Ad-free tier of Hulu is increasing by $1 to $18.99 per month. ESPN Plus is increasing $1 to $11.99 per month or $119.99 per year. If you subscribe to one of the Disney Duo basic bundles, that one's going to change for people who are on the ad tier. It's going to go up $1. If you're on the ad-free tier, you are the exception. Congratulations, no price increase for you. The Disney Trio bundle for both ad and non-ad supported is increasing $2 as well. And Hulu Plus Live TV is increasing $6 per month. So, price increases across the board. I'll just say, Sigmund, I was a subscriber of the ad-free Disney Duo, so I would have avoided it anyway, but I'm also feeling really good about signing up for that Max bundle last week, because that's another way to avoid these price increases as well if you do the Disney Plus, Hulu, and Max.
Yeah. I think my question would be, taking that bundle out of the equation for a second,
mm-hmm.
What do you think the absolute limit is that Disney can go to? Because it feels like every few months we're having this conversation specific about Disney and their subscriptions, of course, along with others. But
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think the question really is there a limit at this point?
I think there is on the consumer side for sure.
I think there probably is, but I wonder if we're anywhere near it, honestly. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too sucked into the whole streaming game. I still feel like I'm getting a good deal on these services with the amount of content that I watch. And, it all started with Netflix, who introduced the whole thing and really just set the bar so low, kind of like the early days of the App Store when things were just so cheap and you got so much for your money. And Netflix, you've seen how high they go, and they're continuing to do it, and they continue to gain subscribers. So I think we're on our way towards higher prices. It's all evening out, and streaming that has been such a good deal compared to what we had before is not looking like such a good deal anymore. But the other thing too is we talk about consolidation, and I think as the prices go up, there's only room for so many services. So I think we're going to be paying more for these services, but I have to imagine there might be fewer of them, and kind of that content might get consolidated more over time. So maybe it'll even out. I don't know. It's a really interesting transition period, and I can totally understand how it's frustrating for people as these prices just keep going up and up and up.
I mean, I think maybe the other side of things that we have to kind of take into contention is that a lot of these services are running on debt. Mm-hmm. I read an article this week about Netflix selling, I think, 1.8 million of their debt, and I believe their debt is at 1.8 billion. So there's a lot going on in this world.
Well, you are going to be paying more for these services, but Disney is giving a little bit more content to kind of sweeten the deal. For some people, this may make them very happy. Disney Plus is also giving subscribers access to ABC News Live and a new set of monthly curated playlists, starting with a preschool playlist and expanding soon to include playlists for seasonal content, epic stories, throwbacks, and real life. So some curation going on there as well, and I guess that's what they're doing with that extra money from your subscription.
ABC News Live. Yes, there's something I need in my life.
Sticking with spending money and Disney's offerings in the streaming world, more details have been shared about Venue, the upcoming sports streaming service from Disney, Fox, and Warner Brothers Discovery. Of course, the big question about this big team up is how much is it going to cost? Well, this week we found out the service will cost $42.99 per month after a 1-week free trial with no long-term contracts required. So I think that's a high price, but thankfully you're not locked in, which is nice. Subscribers will have access to live linear channels, including ESPN, ABC, Fox, TNT, and TBS, as well as on-demand content and ESPN Plus, spanning games from the NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, professional tennis, and college sports. Venue is slated for release this fall. I think they're aiming to start before the start of the NFL season, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and I would say expensive, considering this is just like a selection of games from all of these different leagues, but likely cheaper than therapy. And I'm pretty sure that's why so many of us do tap into sports in the first place and get obsessive about it. And talking of which, starting with some Apple original release news this week, Shrinking will return for its second season on October 16th, according to an announcement video that's now been pulled from Apple's TV social media channels, but remains on my social media channel. Shrinking co-creator Brett Goldstein of Ted Lasso fame is also slated to star in this upcoming season in what is a top secret role. So we've got that to look forward to. And this is a bit of a strange one because I think this news wasn't scheduled to go out as soon as it did. That said, Deadline reported on it. The advert at the time of recording is still pulled from all social media. And I had a few people kind of put a comment on my X post saying, "Oh, this is new. Other people are advertising Apple's originals." So, bit tongue-in-cheek. Bit harsh, but yeah, I think everyone that's aware that Shrinking Season 2 is coming, like in literally a month and a half's time, is absolutely blown away by it. The reasons to keep subscribed to Apple TV Plus keep coming, continuing later on in the month of October.
That's right, because we have Before, the highly anticipated limited thriller series starring Billy Crystal, which is going to premiere on Apple TV Plus on Friday, October 25th. The upcoming thriller follows a child psychiatrist who, after losing his wife, encounters a troubled young boy who has a haunting connection to the man's past. So you got a little Harrison Ford, and then you got a little Billy Crystal in October. Good combo there. And the thing that surprises me, or maybe I'm just realizing that this year's passing away, Sigmund, is we're talking about Apple Originals that we're going to be watching over the holiday break into the new year, into, of course, anticipation for Severance, which I think is really what all this calendar is leading up to. But just a really awesome fall slate and going into the holidays from Apple TV Plus too.
Absolutely. I mean, if we tried to list it off the top of our heads, we'd probably miss a couple, but Slow Horses, Shrinking, Silo, and they're just the returning shows. Yeah, absolutely mind-blowing. And talking of returning shows, Season 2 of Monarch Legacy of Monsters began filming last week, at the same time that filming for Foundation Season 3 wrapped. And thanks to some industry friends of Magic Rays of Light, we can exclusively reveal that the second season of Criminal Record is scheduled to begin filming at the end of this year. I believe October, November time as well. So we can expect to see that, I'd imagine, April, May time, maybe a little bit before then. Excited to see Criminal Record return as well.
In development news, new Apple original film American Wolf is in the works at Apple Studios, with Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Davison's Appian Way producing as part of their overall deal with Apple, and Ashley Avis on board to write and direct. Based on a novel by Nate Blakesley, American Wolf tells the captivating true story of 06, a highly intelligent alpha female wolf in Yellowstone, whose rise and tragic fall catapult the persecution of her species into the global spotlight. And then in some, I'm not going to call this casting news, it's more anti-casting news, really. It's someone telling us they're not going to be in a show. Peter Sarsgaard, who portrayed Tommy Malto in the first season of Presumed Innocent, told IndieWire this week that he will not be returning for the show's second season. So my theory was that they might continue on with Tommy and Nico, kind of keep them around and have them be the glue that ties the show together in season 2, and looks like that's not going to be the case. So if you love to hate watching Tommy Malto, well, you're just going to have to rewatch season 1.
And that brings us to this week's Apple TV releases. Starting with today, new episodes of Time Bandits, Sunny, and Women in Blue. Sunny, of course, John Voorhees' pick on the latest episode of Mac Stories Unwind, featuring your good self. On Thursday, at 6 p.m. Pacific on the Apple TV YouTube channel, Yo Gabba Gabba Land live premieres with a watch-along and Q&A with the show's creators. And on Friday, an immersive premiere, episode 2 of Wildlife, where we join orphaned elephants as they find their footing at Kenya's Sheldrick Wildlife Trust, forming a chosen family with each other, their caregivers, and wild elephants, with a 9-minute runtime. So excited for episode 2 of Wildlife on Apple Vision Pro. Alongside, of course, our highlight this week, the streaming premiere of Apple original film The Instigators, and the premiere of Yo Gabba Gabba Land, alongside a new episode of Lady in the Lake. On Friday evening, of course, we have Friday Night Baseball at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we see the Cleveland Guardians at Minnesota Twins and Cincinnati Reds at Milwaukee Brewers, of course, part of your multi-view experience, if you so wish, alongside the Leagues Cup on MOS Season Pass, which is really kicking in to full gear.
In terms of extras this week, we've got Silo, Common's freestyle rap at San Diego Comic-Con. I mean, who doesn't want to see Common rap, right? That's just something for everyone, so be sure to check that out. For Lady in the Lake, we have Another Take with Natalie Portman, a behind-the-scenes featurette with her. And then we have the appearance of none other than Vince Vaughn on Hot Ones. Of course, Vince Vaughn has his series Bad Monkey premiering very soon on Apple TV Plus. We'll be talking about that next week. So if you want to see him eat some hot wings and chat on Hot Ones, we'll link that in the show notes as well.
And you know how, like, I don't know, if you watch Hot Ones, everyone's watched Hot Ones, right?
I mean, if you've seen Loot, you've seen Hot Ones, right?
Yeah, sure. But the concept is you have a chat whilst eating hot wings with hot sauce. And most people kind of dab the bits of chicken. Right? Vince Vaughn just pours it on. He's such a trooper, and it's such a good conversation. So highly, highly recommend checking that one out. Of course, last week saw the finale to Land of Women, which we're about to recap briefly on this episode, with Gala, a New York City socialite on the run in a quaint Spanish town with her mother and daughter, where her life brings her into the path of a brash but charming winery owner and a deep well of family secrets. It's created by Ramon Campos, Gemma Arnera and Paul Fernandez, directed by Carla Sades, starring Eva Longoria, Carmen Mora, Victoria Buzier and Santiago Cabrera. I have to be honest with you, Devon, I fell off this show fast. It just wasn't for me. However, I think you enjoyed it more than I did. So, Land of Women, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I had fun with this one. I think it's a cool premise as far as, going on the run and going back to your roots. The Spanish countryside shots, just gorgeous, makes for such an amazing setting for a series as well. And of course brings that international aspect to Apple TV Plus that we love to see. I just found this one a really fun watch. It's silly and quirky in all the right ways. There were some really great laughs, and it wasn't ever too terribly serious, even with, of course, the whole storyline with the mobsters who are coming after her, and that's why she has to run away. Even they're pretty silly characters. It's not like a scary situation as far as for the viewer or anything like that. You're not in a lot of tension about how things are going to turn out for Gayla and her family. I especially laughed at the Mamma Mia style hijinks surrounding the identity of Gayla's father. Watching this show, I was like, we're really just watching Mamma Mia, but in Spain. And instead of trying to be sly and conceal who the father is, instead, Gayla's mother's just going around to different men throughout town and telling them that they're the father, and then finding out why they can't be, but just upending these men's life out of nowhere. And, it made for some really great humor, and I thought that whole storyline was really, really great. It also did have quite a bit of heart to it. I think, there were some emotional payoffs throughout the series that were really enjoyable. I love the dynamic between Gayla, Julia, and Kate. 3 women with such different experiences and such different things that they bring to the table in terms of this trip and the relationships with their mothers, and lots of just different aspects to explore there, and ways that they've avoided each other and avoided certain things that they needed to deal with. And on this trip, you see a lot of healing and empowerment that's happening between these 3 women that I find really inspiring and enjoyable. And of course, you've got Santiago Cabrera, who kind of brings that romantic element to it. He's that guy, and it's Land of Women, and it's these women making wine, but he's the farmhand, and he just brings that element to it that I thought was fun as well. There's a lot of mystery surrounding him, and just these little tidbits from his past life that are not addressed at all. They just kind of throw these details out there and leave it hanging. And there were actually several elements of the show that came in that way. I thought this was a mini series, 6 episodes, very, very short season, not a lot of time spent in the Land of Women, but the way that they left it, there were some very, very loose ends. And so I hope there's a second season. I really think, honestly, the way they ended it, they're setting it up for a second season. Not what I was expecting. That with that episode order, it's not really something that you would expect to be a multi-season type thing. But I hope that they load up their cameras and go back to the wine country of Spain and film a second season of Land of Women, because I want to find out what happened. I don't love loose ends, as you know. And this one left a lot of them. So I guess that is something to keep in mind as we're awaiting a season renewal. If you do watch it, you might be disappointed if there isn't a second season. Unfortunate that's something you have to keep in mind these days. But I thought it was a great 6 episodes of television. Not a lot of commitment, but a lot of enjoyment. So I think it's worth checking out. And all 6 episodes of season 1 are now streaming on Apple TV+.
Well, another packed week for Apple TV releases, and lots to look forward to in the future as well. But as we do every week, we end with our Up Next picks for this week. And we start with a podcast appearance from last week, talking about TV and movie tracking and some other recommendations, not just Apple originals, but across the board, really.
Yeah, John and I got together for Mac Stories Unwind last week. It was a lot of fun. Got to share a couple picks and talk about some of my strategies for TV tracking and hear how he's tracking not only TV, but some other things. So yeah, if you haven't heard last week's Mac Stories Unwind, it's a fun show, just kind of a fun way to relax and get a few picks out there. So definitely check that out. We'll link it in the show notes. For my TV pick this week, I've got a series I haven't had a chance to watch yet, but I saw it was coming to Netflix, and I thought this was one I need to keep my eye on. It's called A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. It stars Emma Myers from Wednesday. Love her performance in Wednesday, but she stars as a young woman named Pip, who decides to investigate a murder that was thought to have been solved 5 years ago, but she has her doubts that the police caught the right person. And I was reading up on this on Vulture, and they described it as Nancy Drew for Gen Z. I just thought that was a really compelling description, and with between that and the lead actress Emma Myers, I thought this was worth checking out. So a little bit of a teen murder mystery on Netflix from your side of the pond, Sigmund. It's a UK series, so Good Girl's Guide to Murder. That's my pick for this week.
I love how our Up Next picks often kind of fall under the same kind of category, and we'll get into that in a minute. But before that, some TV app highlights. So also on Netflix this week, Umbrella Academy returns for season 4, along with a return that I'm highly looking forward to, and that's the return of Industry with season 3 on Max. Normally we see that come out in like a February time, wintry time. It's really interesting to see this come out in the middle of August. Then we have the feature The Bike Riders, which I actually saw in cinemas not that long ago, and we talked about not that long ago on this very podcast. That's coming to Peacock. Then we have Girl You Know It's True, which is coming to premium VOD. It's about the downfall of Milli Vanilli, who were a pop duo phenomenon from the 1980s, whose career was torn to shreds and authenticity put into question following an infamous lip sync failure on live TV. Really, really cool to see this story brought to feature film. So I'm excited to see that. A film I saw recently, Mad Max Furiosa, is coming in its black and chrome edition form to premium VOD this week. Alongside next Tuesday, Twisters, Watchmen Chapter 1 and Mother's Instinct. All completely different films, all come highly, highly recommended by me. My sale highlight for this week is the complete series of Succession, just because I'm drumming this into Devon to get him to finally watch this fantastic show. It's $39.99 currently in the store. Normally each season goes for $29.99 a pop. Comes as a high recommendation when you're looking at the sales this week. But my Up Next pick this week is a film that I didn't know anything about until I saw it recommended in the TV app, and I loved the premise so much I purchased it and I watched it, and I had such a blast. The title of it tells you everything, really. Humanist vampire seeking consenting suicidal person. This is a film about a Gen Z vampire named Sasha who's got a serious problem. She can't kill. And her exasperated parents have now cut off her blood supply, putting her life into jeopardy. At which point Sasha meets Paul, a lonely teen with suicidal tendencies who is willing to give his life for hers, and they begin a nocturnal quest to fulfill Paul's last wishes before she gets her feed. It's a really, really twisted film, but it's hilarious, and it really does kind of talk to the empathy that we, connect to Gen Zers, and the inherent complications that causes, especially for a young vampire. So, yes, humanist vampire seeking consenting suicidal person and A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, I think, is a perfect Gen Z double bill for this week. And that is where we end this episode of Magic Rays of Light. Another great conversation, Devon. Can't wait to do it again. But before next week, how can people get in contact with us?
Well, we always love to hear your feedback. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review there. You can also contact us on social media via the links in the show notes. You can email the show or send us an iMessage to magic@macstories.net. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back same time next week with the premiere of Bad Monkey and more discussion from the world of Apple TV. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and have a great week.